Hello, and welcome to EquixLife. Today we're going to explore one of our most fascinating and sometimes underestimated senses, taste. But taste is much more than just identifying flavors. It's deeply connected to our emotions and memories. Think about your favorite childhood dish. Doesn't trying it transport you back to those happy moments? Now, have you ever wondered why some people hate Brussels sprouts or bitter coffee, while others love them? The answer might be in your genes. Have you ever wondered why some people hate Brussels sprouts or bitter coffee, while others love them? The answer might be in your genes. Imagine being able to perceive flavors much more intensely than others. Supertasters not only notice bitterness more, but they are also hypersensitive to sweetness and spiciness. For them, broccoli can have an unbearable bitterness, and a dessert that is delicious to you can be cloyingly sweet to them. And how is this possible? It all comes down to biology. Supertasters have a greater number of taste buds on their tongue, specifically fungiform papillae, which are those small bumps you can see if you look at your tongue in a mirror. More taste buds mean more taste receptors, and therefore a much more powerful flavor experience. This trait is also hereditary. So why is bitterness the central theme in all of this? The answer lies in our ancestors and evil. Historically, many poisons and toxins found in nature have a bitter taste. Therefore, having a high sensitivity to this taste was an incredibly useful survival mechanism. It was like having a natural alarm that told you, "Careful, this could be dangerous." This helped our ancestors avoid toxic plants and spoiled food. Furthermore, from a scientific point of view, bitter taste is one of the easiest to measure and study in a laboratory. Being a supertaster has its pros and cons. On the one hand, this sensitivity can lead to avoiding healthy vegetables such as kale or spinach due to their bitterness. They may also be more reluctant to drink coffee, green tea, or even beer. This aversion to certain foods could, in theory, affect your diet and your long-term health. But on the other hand, their ultra-sensitive palate also makes them less likely to consume very sugary or fatty foods, as the sensation is too overwhelming. This could protect them against certain health problems related to excess sugar and fat. Even their sensitivity to spice can influence their culinary choices, leading them to prefer milder foods. And now for the million-dollar question. How do you know if you're a... There are simple home tests you can try. One of the best known is to use paper strips impregnated with a substance called propylthiouracil or prop. For most people, this paper tastes like nothing. But for a supertaster, it has a very unpleasant bitter taste. Another way, less scientific but fun, is to count the taste buds on the tip of the tongue with the help of a little blue food coloring. Being a supertaster is neither good nor bad. It is simply a fascinating characteristic of human diversity. It reminds us that each of us experiences the world, and in this case food, in a unique and personal way. The next time someone at the table says something is too bitter, instead of thinking they're a complainer, you might be dining with a true super. And you? Do you think you could be one of them? Is there any food you can't stand that everyone else loves? Tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to read about your experiences. Now let's talk about the foundation in linguistic structures. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have a superpower when it comes to flavors, while for others, everything tastes more or less the same? It's not magic. It's science. And the key lies in our language. Each of us has small structures on our tongue called taste buds, which are like the detectives of taste. They are responsible for identifying the 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and the famous umami, which is that delicious and tasty sensation. Although we can all perceive these 5 tastes, our tongue has specialized areas. The tip is the champion for sweetness. The sides are mainly responsible for saltiness and acidity. And the back is the expert at detecting bitterness. Umami, that very special taste, is perceived equally throughout the tongue. Now, here's the interesting part. We don't all have the same number of taste buds. Imagine they are like sensors on a control panel. There are people, whom we call supertasters, who have an incredible density of these sensors. We're talking about 60 papillae per square centimeter of your tongue. It's crazy! That's why, for them, the flavors are much more intense. Broccoli can taste extremely bitter to them, and a dessert incredibly sweet. Then there are most people, the normal tasters. We have between 15 and 35 taste buds in that same area. We perceive the flavors in a balanced way without being overwhelmed. And finally, there are the non-tasters who have fewer than 15 taste buds per square centimeter. For them, flavors are much more subtle, and that's why they often need to add more salt, sugar, or spices to their food to make it taste like something. So, the next time you argue with a friend about whether something is too bitter or too sweet, Remember that it could be that your tongues are simply built differently. Each of us lives in our own universe of flavor. And you? Which group do you think you belong to? Are you a super taster, a regular taster, or a non? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read them. On the other hand, have you ever wondered why you hate broccoli or can't stand coffee while others love it? It's not that you're picky. The answer might be in your genes. Today, we're going to unravel the fascinating mystery of super. It turns out that roughly 1 in 4 people worldwide is what scientists call a supertaster. Yes, you could be one of them. So, where do we find these bitter flavors? They're in compounds called glucosidae, which are very common in cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, Brussels sprouts, or cauliflower. They are also present in popular drinks such as coffee, beer, and even red wine. So, if you're one of those people who wrinkles their nose at these things, your TAS2R38 gene might be working overtime. The intensity with which you feel bitterness depends on the versions or alleles of this gene that you have inherited. Imagine it this way. If you have 2 copies of the supersensitive version of the gene, one from each parent, bitter flavors will seem incredibly strong, almost unbearable. It's like having the bitterness volume turned up to maximum. On the other hand, if you only have 1 copy of this sensitive version and another of a less sensitive version, you will still notice the bitterness, but in a much more moderate way. And if you don't have a copy of the sensitive version, you'll probably barely notice the bitterness in these foods and drinks. To you, broccoli might have a mild, earthy taste, while to a supertaster, it's an explosion of bitterness. This genetic difference explains many of our food preferences. It's not a matter of willpower or having a refined palate. It's pure biology. Supertasters, for example, tend to consume fewer bitter vegetables, which may have implications for their long-term health. They may also be more sensitive to spiciness or the texture of fats in food. So the next time you argue with a friend about whether the coffee is too bitter or whether the Brussels sprouts are delicious, remember that you could both be right. They are simply experiencing the world through genetically different taste buds. And that's where the curiosity comes in. Have you ever wondered why your grandfather loves to add more salt to everything? Or why have your tastes changed over the years? The answer lies in our biology. The sensitivity of our sense of taste is not the same for everyone and changes throughout our lives. One of the key factors is age. As we get older, our ability to distinguish flavors diminishes. This happens because our taste receptors, those small papillae on the tongue, gradually atrophy. It's a natural process, so don't worry. But other factors also play a role, such as biological sex and even our culture. And here's a fact that often surprises people. Did you know that the taste map of the tongue that we all learned in school is a myth? There are no exclusive zones for sweet, salty, sour, or bitter. Actually, the whole tongue can perceive all flavors, although some areas are a little more sensitive to certain tastes than others. For example, the tip of the tongue is especially good at detecting sweetness, while the sides are more reactive to sourness and the back to bitter. But what happens to our sense of taste as we get older? Over time, our taste buds' ability to regenerate decreases. This process primarily affects our ability to detect bitter and sour tastes. That's why older adults sometimes prefer foods with more intense or sweet flavors, since their perception of other nuances has weakened. And here's a fun fact. Did you know that women tend to have a more acute sense of taste than men? Scientific evidence suggests that they are more sensitive, especially to bitter tastes. This makes them supertasters more frequently. Hormonal factors, such as changes during the menstrual cycle or pregnancy, are believed to play an important role. This increased sensitivity to bitterness could be an evolutionary defense mechanism to protect the fetus from potential toxins, which are often bitter. But it's not all about biology. Our cultural environment also shapes how we perceive flavors. In societies where many bitter foods are consumed, such as certain vegetables or teas, people develop a greater tolerance and even appreciation for this flavor. It is fascinating to see how in Asian countries like Japan, India, and China, there is a higher proportion of supertasters compared to the populations of Europe and America. This shows that what we eat every day literally trains our palate. So the next time you enjoy your favorite food, think about all the science and culture behind every bite. It's an incredible combination of biology, hormones, and traditions that makes each experience unique. This translates directly into various consequences for overall well-being. A marked hypersensitivity to bitterness can lead to the rejection of highly nutritious foods, rich in dietary fiber and antioxidant compounds, increasing the risk of maintaining unbalanced eating patterns and developing nutritional deficiencies. This condition can also be associated with anxiety and eating disorders, including anorexia nervosa or bulimia. Often, these individuals gravitate towards products with high sugar or lipid content as a compensatory strategy against the intensity of bitterness. thus increasing vulnerability to obesity and metabolic disorders. However, as a positive aspect, this acute perception of bitterness usually translates into a natural aversion to tobacco and moderation in the consumption of alcoholic beverages. Finally, contemporary research confirms that our gastronomic inclinations have solid genetic and physiological foundations, and that individual differences in taste experience do not represent mere whims, but unique ways of relating to the universe of flavors. Ultimately, we're all trying to find a delicious and healthy balance in our own universe of flavors. Thank you for joining me in discovering this. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more curiosities like this. Until next time.